Today on Slack Signal X, from punk to Prozac. 50. That number doesn't mean much until everything gets quiet, and the quiet feels heavier than it used to. This isn't about midlife or a sanitized idea of crisis. It's about what happens when the cracks you ignored for years finally split open. Not all at once, slowly, like rust creeping under the paint. I didn't grow up calling it depression. None of us did. We were moody. We had bad days. We had that thing where you disappear into music or weed or work or whatever numbs the edges enough to make it through. For a long time, I thought that was normal. You get good at functioning with just enough air in your lungs to fake okay. And honestly, that worked for decades. Until it didn't. I didn't try Prozac until my 40s. Not because I thought I was above it, but because I didn't realize how far things had slipped. The pressure builds so slowly, you start to believe the weight is just part of who you are. That the dread, the detachment, the fog, it's just all your baseline. But one day, the pressure breaks the frame. You lose a job or a relationship, or just the will to pretend. And suddenly, all that quiet you used to survive becomes deafening. This is a story about that moment, about the aftermath, about how a generation that was raised to tough it out and keep it moving is quietly imploding behind closed doors. No hashtags, no headlines, just the slow erosion of people who never learned how to ask for help. But before we begin, you know the drill. Please like, subscribe. Don't be a poser. Part 1. Shut up and get over it. We didn't grow up with therapy. We grew up with sarcasm, with parents who smoked indoors, told us to toughen up, and used the TV as a babysitter. We weren't taught to process feelings. We were taught to bury them under layers of jokes, distractions, or silence. The first time I realized something might actually be wrong, I was probably about 14. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Everything felt heavy and hollow at the same time. But I figured it was just, part of growing up, part of being human, so I kept going. I'd found punk around the same time through skateboarding. Not the fashion mall version, but like real punk. Basement shows, Xerox cheesy flyers. A world where anger and sadness had volume. It made sense. It didn't ask questions. It just screamed with you. But you can't scream forever. Not without burning out your voice. 2. Make it look easy. My 20s were a blur of jobs, insomnia, and just enough fun to keep the darkness manageable. I drank, got high, I laughed too loud. It all looked fine from the outside. But on the inside, my brain was overheating. Depression doesn't always show up like a collapse. Sometimes it's just the gradual shrinking of your life. The missed calls, the unanswered emails, the plans you cancel last minute because you just can't imagine putting on a face. Still, I kept moving. I had bills to pay. I had people who counted on me. I thought if I could just keep performing, eventually I'd start to feel it. I didn't. 3. The break. By the time I hit my 40s, things started to crumble for real. Not the big dramatic breakdowns you see in the movies, just this dull, persistent erosion. Like waking up one morning and realize you don't care if the dishes pile up, or if you ever talk to anyone again. There's a moment, if you've been through it, that hits different. It's not sadness, it's numbness. A kind of emotional gravity that pulls you into yourself and shuts the door. That's when I knew something had to change. Not for anyone else, just for the chance to feel something again. That's when I tried Prozac. 4. Chemical ghosts. I didn't expect a miracle. I just wanted the volume turned down, and for a while it worked. The lows weren't so brutal, the anxiety didn't clamp down quite as hard, but the highs faded too. I'd laugh and feel like I was watching it happen from across the room. I'd look at a sunset and know it was beautiful, but not feel it. Like someone dimmed the colors and didn't tell me why. And maybe that's the trade-off. You get a little more stability, a little less edge. But if you're someone who's spent their whole life running on sharp corners and raw nerves, the silence can feel more suffocating than the noise. I stayed on it for a while, then I didn't, then I did again. You get it. 5. Talk or don't. I tried therapy too. A few different versions. Some therapists made me feel like I was being dissected. Others just nodded while I filled the space. It's not that therapy doesn't help. It's that it requires energy, honesty, or willing to open up when everything in you just wants to shut down. Sometimes I didn't want answers. I just wanted not to be alone in it. And no matter how good the therapist, that part is always on you. 6. DIY coping. We self-medicate. That's the Gen X way. Drugs, booze, work, TV, doom scrolling, whatever keeps the demons at bay. It's not glamorous, it's not edgy, it's just survival. There were years when I functioned entirely on momentum and liquor. I'd tell myself it was medicine, and sometimes it was, but most times it was just anesthesia. Meditation came later, and I'll be honest, it helped, but only when I wasn't so deep in the hole that I couldn't sit still. Depression doesn't want stillness. It wants distraction, destruction, or nothing. Still, when I could make it to the mat, when I could actually breathe without the weight crushing my ribs, something shifted. Not too much, but enough to keep going. 7. No headlines, just graves. Gen X isn't trending. Nobody's writing op-eds about our mental health crisis. We just vanish quietly. A friend drinks himself to death at 31. Another hangs himself on his birthday. One more ODs in his sister's apartment and gets remembered in 3 Instagram stories and a GoFundMe. There's no rallying cry, no wellness campaign, just this cultural shrug. We were the middle children of history, and that doesn't stop just because we aged. We internalize the idea that struggle makes you stronger, that you don't ask for help, that vulnerability is weakness. Now it's killing us, one unspoken breakdown at a time. 8. Why am I still here? I'm not better. I'm not enlightened. I'm not here to tell you what worked. I'm just still here. Some days I function, some days I can't. But I've learned that survival isn't about beating the darkness. It's about knowing it's there and living anyway. There's no fix. There's no perfect mix of meds, mindfulness, and microdosing. There's just honesty, one honest moment after another. And if that's all I have to offer, maybe it's enough. If you're listening to this, you're not broken. You're human. And if no one else is saying it, I see you. Please, stay alive. That's the whole point. This has been Slack Signal X.